Good afternoon to our audience here, and happy Friday. And a very good morning and good evening to our virtual audience tuning in from all over the world. Welcome to what is sadly the closing session of the Resilience Hub at COP26. I know. It's been an incredible jam-packed 2 weeks, and I can't believe how fast this has all gone. Before we begin proceedings, I want to start off by saying that what this Resilience Hub represents is historic. Throughout COP, this has become an oasis and a home for those wanting to learn, connect, discuss, and share knowledge on resilience and adaptation. I say historic because it is the first of hopefully many more COPs to come where a hub of this kind has been established. And in the spirit of inclusivity, the Hub has also provided a virtual platform for users and regional centers across Latin America, Africa, South, Southeast, and East Asia, as well as the Pacific. And none of this could have been made possible without the rockstar managing partners, the Arched Rocks Resilience Center at the Atlantic Council, Resilience Shift, and Global Resilience Partnership. I also want to acknowledge the key role that Glasgow Caledonian University has played, which hosts the Center for Climate Justice, in hosting the Hub outside the Blue Zone. This has facilitated greater inclusivity for those who didn't have a Blue Zone pass. So let's give them all a round of applause for their commitment. And I also want to thank and welcome our two champions, Gonzalo, Munoz, and Nigel Topping, for their leadership. You know, they've been working tirelessly for the last 3 years, in the case of Gonzalo, and 2 years for Nigel, in helping mobilize action from the non-state actor community on mitigation and net zero targets. But over the last year, they raised ambitions even more through the establishment of the Global Race to Resilience campaign, sending a strong signal to the non-state actor community and the world that we need to get it right. And as should be clear as day by now, we cannot approach climate change just through one linear pathway of mitigation and net zero. We must raise ambitions and action further towards adaptation, for this is essential and this is just. So let's give them and everyone around the world working on this important task a round of applause for their commitment and leadership to champion action on adaptation. So thanks again for joining us today, Nigel and Gonzalo. But before we begin this fireside chat, I just want to turn to a lovely video that the amazing Resilience Hub has put together to showcase all of the rich work that's taken place over the last 2 weeks. Over to you.
So we're delighted that the Resilience Hub's been a real success here, and we hope that that goes from strength to draw more attention and direct more resources to resilient solutions.
Wow. You know, watching this, I can't help but think about the people behind this hub. And I do want to give a special shout out to the tech team in the back for putting this all together. Also to Karen and Helen, if you guys can wave. They've been managing all of the events and programs. And the real MVP, she's not here, but I call her the chief architect of this whole hub. That's Anastasia Branich from GRP. So let's give them all, especially these women, a big round of applause. So before we go into the discussion, I just want to go over the structure quickly. The first part will be on reflections, where I will be joined with a virtual special guest to ask the champion some questions. And then we'll open up to the floor to the audience as well as the virtual audience where Payal will be managing those questions. And then the second part will focus on forward looking. So we'll ask the champions again about what lies ahead. So it's been a long 2 weeks. I've been working with you both for the last 18 months. So I know it's not just 2 weeks, but the build up until COP. So we're here, we made it, it's Friday. How are you both doing?
Yeah, well, pretty good. But I was just reflecting on your journey to be in that chair from when you started working in the Champions team. Do you mind just sharing with people how you came into the team and how you ended up in that chair? Because for me, it's a beautiful expression of women's voices rising and taking their power. So just explain how you came in and how you ended up doing this.
Thanks, Nigel. Yeah, so I started last year supporting more on the operations team of Race to Zero, so helping kind of build out the infrastructure of that team. And then Race to Resilience kind of came around the corner at the end of the year with your leadership, of course, and David and Jorge really leading that effort. And I wanted to be a part of that. And everyone was really supportive of that. And we kind of took a chance. And you know, with a growing team, I think we started with like 3 or 4. Now I think we're about 18 on Race to Resilience alone, and yeah, it's been so great, so supportive, and yeah.
But anyway, just for me, it's really exciting to see that sort of journey from being basically backroom to following your passion. I don't think anyone had a choice but to say yes, right? And then to be sitting here, so brilliantly facilitating. So that's great. Yeah, I'm tired. But I'm really full of gratitude for the amazing collaboration. I mean, that long list of titles, the generosity that is behind all that, and you know, and the delegate from the Dominican Republic yesterday, representing IOSIS, said that never in their wildest dreams that they had imagined the Marrakesh Partnership community stepping into so much power and collaboration and action. I think the Resilience Hub really reflects that. The thing that I'm really reflecting on right now is how, whisper this quietly to your mitigation colleagues, this community seems to be knocking innovation out of the ballpark. People talk about innovation in technology and get all excited about green hydrogen and green shipping, but I think just this community, in terms of diversity, in terms of different forms of participation, the partnership with GCU, with Professor Jaffrey there, who has turned into best mates with my wife. You know, the virtual hubs. So, you know, I just think it's genius having a hub outside the blue zone, so that all those people who want to participate but can't, and having the virtual hub. So all sorts of and that for me, that for me is really exciting, because I think and the warriors are not victims. That's the other thing that for me really stands out, is I think there's a growing sense of people being pissed off with a victim narrative and saying yes, there's injustice and victimhood, but we don't want to be seen as victims. So I like that. And we were lucky to meet 3 of the youth climate warriors from the Pacific the other day, and that's a much more empowering vibe and much more engaging. Actually, I think it invites more solidarity and more help. So, yeah, that's some of the things that are exciting for me about the progress to date.
I like their new name, the Big Ocean States, right? It's
That's
changing the narrative.
Right.
Yeah.
Good example,
It's all
yeah.
about that. Gonzalo, how are you doing?
Well, again, full of gratitude, and as well starting to feel the physical impacts of the 3 years, have to be honest, but still much more full of joy and gratitude of everything that had happened, and extremely proud of what we have done that is kind of visible for all of you, but happy to also share what might be not that visible. We've shared some of that in some of our speaking notes. The two of us started a learning journey with all of you. I mean, I can see mentors, people that have taught us so much, yourself, Nora. And because you know that the two of us were people absolutely biased towards mitigation. That's something that we have to recognize. And I love how I, even like talking about the narrative, raise the resilience, allow us to put mitigation at the level of importance of adaptation and resilience, and not the other way around. Because we started even saying that, no, we have to put adaptation and resilience at the same level of mitigation. No. Adaptation and resilience have such a level of urgency that while putting the race to resilience, we're allowing mitigation to be at the same level of importance of mitigation. When I was invited to take this role, the main concept for COP25 was time to act. And that as well, in my case, was an invitation to follow science. And I have to recognize that I had the wrong interpretation of science as well, because it was mostly about technology. It was mostly about reducing the emissions. Me as a farmer, how do we use the technology on the farming industry to start capturing, sequestering? So most of my first year was about understanding the problem wrong. And even, and that's the worst part, answering perfectly the wrong answers, the wrong questions, sorry. Answering perfectly the wrong questions. And that's so common, and you feel like you're doing it really well. And you as a community were beautifully slapping our faces and showing us the human size of the tragedy that we're suffering. Because many times that's the missing part. The urgency has human face, have names. And again, bringing Sheila to the room, right? Most of those names are females. And that, of course, means being capable of opening the emotional part of the crisis. And that will allow you to move yourself in all of yourself. There was definitely a part where we had to cross the barrier of the simplistic idea of the single bullet, one size fits all. Let's try to find the simplest way of communicating and solving. That level of arrogance that is blocking us to understand that this is a much more complex crisis, that it's no way you will solve it, not even from a northern perspective, not even at a local level by thinking that a few will solve it for the whole. And what I got from that is what the new version of acting, because you cannot just go and act. You have to first sit and listen. You have to empathize. You have to connect. And I think that nothing better to explain that than setting a resilience hub for people to sit and listen. So that's what I'm celebrating from the Resilience Hub, as well as the 156 events, is that we are allowing the people to sit and listen, empathize, connect. And in my journey, that took me to another understanding of science. And having the CR2, Polly, and Maisa, and all the team in the CR2, and having part of the legacy of Chile, to have the CR2 in the University of Chile leading the expert peer review group for Race to Resilient is probably one of the things that I will bring back home as the biggest pride, because that will be one of the most important elements of the legacy of a COP that was embracing the idea of acting, embracing the idea of science, but we have to recognize in a very wrong way. So it took us all the way around to understand that we were talking about time to act. When we were talking about the importance of science, we were missing initially that part, and now the loop is being closed in the best possible way and in a permanent way, in a sustainable way. So thanks for that. I think that for two champions that were biased towards mitigation, that started together this learning journey, is really, really beautiful, symbolic, and strong, that this is our final public event of the two champions together. We will have another few meetings, but this is our final public event. I cannot imagine a better way to end our journey together than with this event, with all of you together in the place where we were all invited to stop, sit, listen, emphasize, and connect. So thanks so much.
And I have to say, that just a sort of addendum to that. Gonzalo and I got a really nice email from. We did a workshop with civil society organisations, which Christiana Figueres and Mary Robinson facilitated for us, which was really about us listening to different voices. And we got a really nice email from Christiana the other day, effusive, thanking us, saying how great we were. And then Mary Robinson replied saying, "I fully agree. Not bad for two men." So we take that as high praise indeed. You'll know, Mary, but praise that reminds us that we got a lot more work to do to attend to the need to really embrace diversity in all its forms, even more so in this agenda. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Thank you for your reflections. Gonzalo, you mentioned Sheila, and I actually now want to turn to our special guest, who is your friend and Race to Resilience ambassador, and a champion in her own right for the voices on the front lines, Sheila Patel, who will be tuning in virtually. Sheila is the founder and director of Spark and is one of the founders and previous chairs of Slum Dwellers International. I don't know if she's with us. Yeah. Sheila. Hi, Sheila. As I mentioned to you over the phone, although you're not with us in person, you've certainly made an impact. I know I've heard both champions mention you many times. So I will now pass over to you to ask them a question.
So how could I be left out of this party? So I want to start off by saying that listening to both of you, I want to first of all acknowledge what an important milestone it was to be a part of this journey with both of you, and the way in which your own evolution has given so much voice and agency to communities that felt they were poster children of other people's agendas. And so, first of all, thank you very much. Since I wasn't at the COP and I couldn't attend everything and I'm not privy to everything, one of the things that all the networks and community leaders, especially the women with whom we have done a lot of work to help them embrace the climate change process as an internal part of their own journey rather than being told what to do, I want to ask both of you, and I hope this gets recorded because I'd like to have it sent to them. What's the message you want to give all the local community frontline people that have now, because of the race to resilience and the transition that you yourself have made to champion adaptation, what message are you going to give them? And by the way, the Warriors to Victims is part of our campaign. very central. So I'd like to ask both of you to give us messages of what, as our leaders in the race to resilience and our champions, what is the message you want to give them?
First of all, Sheila, it's fantastic to see you. You've been one of those very influential mentors, teachers to me and Gonzalo. I think Gonzalo already mentioned it, but it's seared on my mind, the statement that you made when we were talking about fancy metrics. And we do need fancy metrics and rigorous metrics. And we also need good stories, as Salim always reminds us. But you told us that it would be the poor women of the world who judge whether the race to resilience was a success. And in a way, that's so obvious. But the gulf between fancy metrics and the surroundings of the COP and the poor women of the world, you know, I've been honoured to be welcomed into our homes in slums in Mumbai and in Sao Paulo and Nairobi, and had the most gracious welcomes that I've had in any home. So that kind of gulf between the rhetoric and the abstract and the local, just that phrase just encapsulates that for me, and I think it will always now be with me for the rest of my life, anchoring me in being honest about what we're really doing. I think, you know, and I think, Sheila, you've got a knack for the pithy campaign line. Like if warriors not victims is yours, that's another great one. I think also this idea that I really would look forward to doing more work with you on, of a roof over our heads, you know, just looking at the picture behind you. But I think my number one message would be that to acknowledge that we're really just at the beginning, and that we have a lot more work to do. And I do think under an Egyptian presidency with resilience as a theme that my understanding is they'll want to really take seriously, and it's a huge theme, of course, in the whole of the African continent, which they really want to see featuring. I do think that we've made a really good start at balancing up. In fact, we did have a conversation with Patricia Espinosa at one point where we started getting maybe a bit overexcited. We're talking about two equal campaigns, and at one point we said maybe we should just make Race to Zero a sub-campaign of the Race to Resilience, because really it's all about creating resilient futures. So yeah, my last thought would be that I think we're really only at the beginning, and I'm excited about putting more emphasis and more energy and more intellect into the Race to Resilience next year, especially as one of our commitments for the future of the Marrakesh Partnership is to regionalise our team, so that we're better placed to bring in local voices and work with partners on local solutions, which is something that, again, Sheila, you've been a real champion for, and reminded us that that's another way in which dynamically resilience is very different from mitigation, is that money has to flow locally, solutions have to be local. You don't have silver bullets like, you know, batteries or green hydrogen. They're not so relevant in a slum or in a smallholder farm.
So Sheila, I would like to echo Nigel's words on thanking everything that you have taught us and how you've been supportive of our work, but mostly through very rapidly and very kindly, full of love, showing us every single stupidity that we do. I mean, you're a master on the art of making us feel dumb when we are doing and acting in a stupid way. But I'm saying it absolutely respectful. That means so much. I mean, that reflects your level of not only intelligence, but emotional intelligence, and you do it so beautifully. So I will remind every single moment that I had on talking to you and learning from you. And if I have to reflect on what I take from that and connect it to other topics, and this probably will be a very stupid, simplistic idea, I know, but I will allow myself to fail again. One of the things that I'm taking from COP26 is the importance of landing the trillions of dollars that are required to solve the crisis very rapidly, to the women that can protect the forest and the women that can solve the situations in the slums. It's like, how can we remove the bureaucracy, the barriers, the corruption, for the money to flow very rapidly for towards those women? It's like, it can be very simplistic. I know there are very complexities, and probably in each region, in each locality can be very different. But a simplistic mindset tells me that if we allow all of the support and all of the money to flow rapidly to those women, we will be not only building resilience, but at the same time solving so many other social aspects of the crisis that need to be solved and served urgently.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sheila. We'll come back in the second half where you'll join us again to ask the champions a question. Thank you. This next question is for Nigel. Nigel, resilience is having a moment at COP. You know, I think we have a few COP veterans here, and there's a buzz, there's an energy, and I think people are finally picking it up, and there's traction. So I'm wondering, how can we continue to build on this?
Well, I mean, first of all, by making sure the baseline has continuity, so that, you know, we quite quickly. Where's Dave? David is lost. I think David's final few non-grey hairs went grey over the stress of putting together the partnership. So I think start working now on agreeing that we're going to have a resilience hub next year. And I know that Sheila and Salim have also reached out to offer to help. Let's start planning that now. As soon as we have an Egyptian champion announced, let's start working with them to say if the Egyptian presidency wants to make resilience a big deal, let's have a bigger resilience hub. Let's learn the lessons and have, the University of Cairo or someone as the Glasgow Caledonian University analogy, and let's get the regional hubs excited about the fact that they can already be thinking about working towards that. But most importantly, let's really work to support the great partners we have now in the race to resilience and learn from all of their work. And I think maybe tell the stories of their work. I mean, one thing that I've noticed, I can give an interview on the race to zero, hungover, exhausted, standing on my head, because I've been working on mitigation with big businesses for 15 years. I can't do that. I can't do that for resilience yet. You know, I have to. One of the real disappointments of COVID is I have not been able to go and visit all the partners and see their work, and it needs to be visited in situ, right? Because it's about local context and it's about people. So I think bringing the work of the race to resilience to life with more storytelling, and then assessing where we think the gaps are, where we either need to find initiatives or help initiatives be founded if there are gaps in the overall landscape that we're trying to address.
Thanks, Nigel, and definitely agree. We want to pull more stories and bring that forward next year. This next question is for you, Gonzalo. What reflections and lessons can you share from your 3 years as champion on resilience?
Well, maybe I anticipated my answer when I was explaining my journey, so I don't want to repeat, and mostly say that, sure, all of that journey has led me to understand not only how much I still don't know. So that happens normally, that when you recognize that you're on a learning journey, the gaps grows instead of the gaps reduces on time. But also that there are and there should be more and more opportunities for all non-state actors to be much more integrated into resilience. So one of the things that I learned, and I struggled during these 3 years, was whether this was only an agenda for the parties, for the state members, or there was a need and an opportunity also for the non-state actors to be integrated. So that's where I am still, and I'm realizing, and that's a lot because of you, because the Race to Resilience, because of everything that you have taught us, that this is a major, not only term of urgency, of humanitarian crisis, and human rights but also one that will be able to allow us to stabilize the ecosystem, but also one that is all about risk, security, and competitiveness. So I think that we have a potential narrative where we can integrate those three elements very rapidly into the normal narrative of both not only subnational regions and local communities and local authorities, but also one that resonates very well when it comes to the financial institutions and very well also from the private sector. So if we start like connecting the elements, and therefore I'm so happy with that we're having now our first metrics that should then integrate elements of, as I said, risk, competitiveness, and security that will allow all non-state actors to understand that they need to invest, they need to integrate, and they need to connect their value creation with elements of resilience.
It's that common language that they're used to, plus the stories that we can bring forward. Now I think we're going to turn to the audience, both in-house and virtual. So if anybody has a question, we can pass the mic around. Maybe Tassie? Yeah.
Thank you. No. Thanks, Nora. It's working. No, I guess thank you, Gonzalo and Nigel, for your comments. I got a reflection actually, and it's on two aspects, right? It's on use of language, and it's on framing. So that one about this word resilience, and the use of language of poor women. Women are resilient. The most vulnerable women are resilient, because if they weren't, they would have disappeared a long time ago. So that's one thing I think is really important to know. And I think in terms of language, it's thinking about how do we make those women stronger and better? How do we create those enabling environments to support them, right? And it's thinking about how do we embrace those issues as we go forward, because we need to almost in a sense go beyond looking at that poor woman. Poor women have a lot of knowledge, a lot of insight. They're not poor, they're very rich. They have a lot to offer. So my plea going forward is to think about how do we even go beyond what we've already labelled out as resilience, and ensure that we have justice and equity and human rights as absolutely fundamental in the framework and the metrics going forward. So that's more of it's a reflection, but also wondered whether you have any thoughts on these two aspects, framing and indeed on the use of language.
Yeah, a couple of thoughts. We won't change the name of the campaign. We wanted to call it the Race to Resilience because we wanted to anchor it in the process here respectfully, but we deliberately didn't call it the Race to Adaptation and Resilience, because we think that adaptation and resilience is a term of art that means nothing outside of the negotiations and just confuses people, and that resilience is actually a more attractive thing to race to adaptation is a bit of a totally agree about women being resilient, about in fact the people, the most vulnerable communities often being the most resourceful because they have to. I'm reminded of my friend Nisreen, who's the young Sudanese woman who's the chair of the Secretary General's Youth Advisory Group. I met her in Marseille at the Nature Congress, and I told her that I'd had an awful day because I couldn't get a Wi-Fi signal on the train on the way down. And she just laughed at me because she said, where I come from, if you get Wi-Fi signal once a day and power 2 hours a day, you're in luck. That's such a northern problem, I would never complain about not having Wi-Fi on a train because I wouldn't expect it, and so I have to find, have to be more resourceful to find ways around. So I like the framing of. So what we've tried to do is challenge the framing of victims, which is why I like warrior, not victim, because victim is but also it's a narrative trap created by the structure of the negotiations set in a 1992 world, where if you just listen to the negotiations, you would get the impression that there's a whole series of vulnerable countries saying that the solution is give us more money. that I've got. I know why that happens in the negotiations, but we can't afford for that to be the narrative which comes out, because it's a disempowering one. It's a very difficult one for anybody new to come in and invest time or money into, is a sense of people complaining. So I really agree this sense that we're talking about communities which are resourceful and need solidarity to work to strengthen based on that resourcefulness. So not given, but we have to be. Language is so desiccated. I mean, I got attacked the other day for not mentioning poor people. So poverty is a reality, right? And I totally understand the narrative of people being rich in resources and rich in culture and rich in many non-financial ways, but still financial poverty is at the heart of the fragility of lives and livelihoods, right? So we have to be nuanced about that and keep dancing around that and not falling into the trap of thinking that poverty means in all aspects of life, or the resilience means incapacity or lack of resourcefulness. I think, and any campaign phrase is always going to, even warriors, not victims. It's not. Sheila's not raising a military army. I know that, right? I mean, but there's a military kind of connotation to warriors. So, but I think keep continuing to, and this is something where especially as a white, pale, stale male mitigation geek, I need help on rights. So this is why we need people. We need those of you who've been working in climate justice on the front lines for years to catch us using framing which is, at worst, at best clumsy, at worst downright insensitive or insulting, even though it might be well intentioned, because it's not familiar. It's not such familiar. I mean, I am learning a lot and getting better, but so appreciate always this is the kind of challenge which Gonzalo's been talking about, Sheila giving us. I also really like the idea of looking at justice and equity in the metrics, and that's something to go and look at with McKinsey, who've been doing all the work on metrics, and Paulina may have some thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, just complementing that, Tassim, is I think that of course there are many barriers in terms of balancing the inequalities and the injustice. Being one of them, the access to opportunities, and I just want to reflect on this is a moment for how I feel it, and I think that I share with Nigel that it's a moment for positive discrimination, period. We have to go for positive discrimination. If not, we will not solve it. So any type of opportunity that we can provide for people that don't have the same level of access to opportunity is a opportunity for changing that reality and changing the trajectory towards a just world that we require.
Thank you. And we are a bit tight on time, and I was told that you guys already answered a question from our virtual audience. So we'll move on to the next part, which is looking ahead. Nigel, this question is for you. You'll be the high-level champion next year with the Egyptian high-level champion. What are you hoping for next year?
I mean, personally, I'm hoping to be able to put more of my time and intellect into the complexities around resilience, particularly unlocking finance to get to the front line. I think that we've done a good job of assembling this massive coalition called the Glasgow Finance Alliance, with gazillions of money, and of starting them thinking about how that money flows to emerging markets and developing countries, so that we get some of their brain power working on problem solving to unlock. How do we create the conditions for money to flow? I think that the point that Gonzalo made, how do we rapidly accelerate that money flowing to in much smaller amounts to very many more local projects, seems to be a structural problem that, Tassim, I think it was you telling me the other night that was it the African Development Bank saying that, we can only give away money $10 million at a time, and so we can't give it to women working in slums, kind of thing. So we have to come up with a better answer than that, right? So for me, it'll be the two things that I'm really looking forward to next year. One is actually going to see partners work in situ. I want to go and see Sheila, go and see Salim, get a lived sense of the work, and then intellectually spend more time working with partners on unlocking finance.
Great, so essential. Gonzalo, I heard Professor Salim al-Haq mention that COP stands for two things: Conference of Parties in the Blue Zone, but also Conference of People outside. And when it comes to the Conference of People, the youth have been understandably quite vocal. On this point, how can we incorporate young people's views more effectively?
I think that the question implies that they haven't been effective, and that's wrong. Probably so much of what we're seeing today is really related to how they have pushed the agenda. So I would never refer to their role until now of being one that hasn't been effective, right? And will encourage them to keep on pushing. I think that all of us are extremely thankful for, of course, the level of energy that they've put in the last, 3-5 years, but we can recognize young voices coming from the Earth Summit and even before. And their importance is, of course, coming much more to the center of the agenda, and that's beautiful. We are seeing elements of that as examples, like what we saw yesterday with Vanessa and First Minister Sturgeon is a great example of things that can progress. I really expect that all of you can take all of those examples into account. You know that we have done some piloting while not only having the youth fellows, but also recognizing that we have 35% of our team being people that are recognized by the United Nations are young people, and many of them holding the pen for projects that are being implemented today. It's not just that they are supporting or having a secondary position. We have young people, as yourself, like being really in the center of the agenda of the champions, and those are opportunities we do expect that are being fruitful, valid, and then recognized by the system as opportunities for many others. Having said that, and having said that as a base, I think that the two of us were struggling during this year with the tension of the aggressive approach and the proactive approach. And I'm, again, oversimplifying it, but yeah, most of the time it's about complaining. And we understand that there is a role for complaining. There is a role for saying that things are far from being solved, that there's so much injustice, there's so much destruction, there's so much things that are not working. But of course we feel that it's wrong when that's said in a way that reflects that there's nothing good. And we're not saying that we have to go to say everything is good, and rather not say that everything is bad, but we validate and appreciate so much when the criticism comes in a constructive way. And we've heard a lot about that. So I would encourage the young people to check about the opportunities that are there. How many of them are new? And try to celebrate and position their voices there, but also keep on criticizing and pushing the agenda with not only in a constructive way, but with real concrete ideas, knowledgeable ideas or knowledgeable questions, saying, I understand what somehow took us here. I recognize that there were some bias, that there were some blind spots, that there were some imperatives of the past, and I validate anyone saying I made a mistake and I want to correct it, rather than expecting to kill the messenger or kill the person that is even opening the possibility of learning, right? I don't know if I'm reflecting well, but the point here is I think that there must be an opportunity of putting all of those elements together with a young voice, with a youth narrative that can be definitely not only constructive, but also one is that again is active, that can provide the solutions while pushing the agenda forward with high level of ambition.
Thank you, Gonzalo. We're now actually going to turn back to our friend Sheila Patel for the last two questions. So Sheila, if you're with us, I'll hand back to you.
I'm listening very intently to this conversation. It means a lot to me. So I have one question each for both of you. So before I start with the questions, I just want to put on record that the two of you, with the commitment to open doors to all types of people, to turn attacks into opportunities, like you said just now, Gonzalo, you have made more people aware of the role of champions and the contributions that come into the climate space in a, maybe not in a intergovernmental way, but in the public domain than we know in the past. And one of the questions I want to ask you is how much of that was possible because you all worked together for more than, Gonzalo was there for 3 years, Nigel, you were there for 2 years. So how will this reverting back to just 1 year and 2 years, this sort of quick shifting of things, ensure this amazing culture that you have set up here? That was one. Gonzalo, in social movements, as you know, nobody who is impactful and effective is allowed to leave. So what do we do to trap you in this place? Because you're not going anywhere as far as we are concerned. And so on behalf of the many networks that you have welcomed into this process, that's my first question to both of you. The other thing I want to say is, by saying this is a year of action, really between now and the next COP, how do we use all the events, whether national, regional, global, to push forward the adaptation agenda in various ways? And one of the things which I have embraced is this dialogue about metrics. And the network of community people are saying, let us enter that space to show you how we are the goalkeepers of solutions, but make it something that we can do in terms that works for us, that gives us political space and voice, but that aggregates into the global metrics that you need. And the last thing I want to say is I want to thank the earlier speaker on looking at the women in informal settlements and in vulnerable communities. And what I have learned in the discussion on resilience is that earlier their resilience, their strategies and their ability to do work was operational in a situation of survival. And what resilience as a concept does, it says, how can you take a leap forward where you not only anticipate what challenges you will face and be prepared for them, but that every solution that you take today operates to produce solutions that are good for you and good for your city and good for the planet. And so I think this thing about balancing local and global knowledge, local and global metrics, I think is a very important function of the Resilience Hub. And so I want to know what you think about that, so that more communities, more local adapters on the front line can be sitting with people who are discussing this globally and put a caveat to say this doesn't work for us or learn something new. Sorry to take so much time.
First? Okay. Well, first, thank you, Sheila. As usual, you touch the bottom of my heart, and then you know I'm not going anywhere. In terms of we not only when they come to the social and environmental movement and community, but mostly this particular community on climate. Who was the person that mentioned that in Winter Park that was telling to Alok. Was it Laurent Fabius, right?
No, Laurence Tubiana.
Laurence Tubiana was telling Alok that day, like.
Laurence Tubiana, many of you will know, was the French special envoy on climate change, one of the real architects of Paris and the first climate champion.
Champion one.
And we had a big meeting of former presidents and champions and advisors to the UK presidency very early on, about 2 weeks after Alok Sharma took the role.
The last trip before COVID.
Yeah. And Laurence Tubiana looked him in the eye and said, welcome to the climate club, Alok. You will never leave.
So I'm basing my answer there. And taking that and connecting that to the question, we need to honor the mandate. We need to honor the process. We need to honor the rules of the game, let's say. And in that sense, we on one side, there's a beauty on this process, allowing people to come on and out and be holding the soft power of the role and the capacity of bringing new ideas. And I think that there's such a beautiful element on that sense. And of course, the mandate says that it's a 1 year, and that's a massive challenge. So we were very weirdly privileged by COVID on having an extra year, and I was all the time comparing what was my first year, trying to put everything together towards COP25 in Santiago and then in Madrid. We were very resilient. I don't know if you remember, but that COP was supposed to be held by Brazil, so Brazil decided not to. Chile stepped on. We built everything, and then we had to move in 1 month from Santiago to Madrid, and then COVID came and sustained the presidency. Has been a beautiful, resilient journey. And I can recognize that a lot of what we have done is, of course, related to having that extra year, no doubt about it. Having said that, a lot of that is also related to some political changes that happened globally that were extremely important to align all of the climate community towards the same goals. A lot of that was about the financial institutions getting aligned and putting climate in the center. A lot of that was about the youth and the civil society expressing with more strength. A lot of that was about science, giving an extra document saying, Code Red for Humanity. A lot of that was about the political power of the SG. But a lot of that was about the evidence of nature and communities all around the world saying enough is enough. All of those elements added to the connection that we two had and the amazing generosity of Nigel Topping. Because all of you that know the process know very well that the incoming champion holds much more power than the, let's say, champion related to the presidency.
Don't tell Egypt that.
Sorry?
Don't tell Egypt that.
No, we won't tell Egypt that. But what Nigel did, by offering me the possibility of running for the first time this agenda as 2 champions, 1 team, was even before COVID started, was even before having that extra year, was an attitude, was generosity in the center, was understanding that the only way we can change this is putting innovation connected to radical collaboration. And I will share a thought that I've shared many times. This is like when you go camping with a friend and both empty their backpacks and empty their pockets and say, what are you bringing? What is the other bringing? And how we can build something together with the elements that we brought. Well, I was bringing my pockets, he was bringing a truck. And with all of those elements, we were capable of building together most of what you've seen, but hopefully the most important element, an agenda that should continue forward with the idea of 2 champions, 1 team, with strong campaigns in the center, with radical collaboration not only around the market partnership, but around all non-party stakeholders, and with a clear understanding that we need to follow science with solidarity and with integrity. I think that those elements were not only related to the extra year, but related to all of the other concepts that I brought, and mostly thanks to Nigel Topping. Thank you, my brother.
Beautiful words from the heart. Thank you for that. I'm just mindful of time, and I know you have other commitments after this. So maybe we'll turn now to Professor Salim Al-Haq, who is the director of the International Center for Climate Change and Development, and he's also a Race to Resilience ambassador. Dr. Haq, you are a COP veteran. You've been at every COP. So we would love to hear your reflections before passing on to Jorge for closing the session. Please.
Great. Thank you very much, Nora. And Nigel, Gonzalo, let me stand over here so I can see everybody. It's been a great pleasure working with you over the last year or so. And really, I'm very, very happy that we were able to pull this off. So I'm just going to share some reflections on the Resilience Hub that we organized and how we might think about doing it next. Let me start, though, by giving a little bit of my view of the difference between the Race to Zero and the Race to Resilience. They are different. And one of the differences you can see across the two visuals we have here. Over there, we've got companies like IBM, Google, Deloitte, etc., logos. And over here, we have this woman from South Asia, I'm presuming, with a smiling face. That is the face of resilience. And those are the faces or the symbols of the Race to Zero. And we need to embrace that diversity and those people. And one of the things we did when we designed this hub, when we were thinking of it, initially we knew that almost half the least developed countries were on the UK's red list for travel. The red list meant coming to the UK and spending 10 days in a hotel in quarantine at your own expense. Incidentally, I did that just to make sure I was going to come here in time. And many people, because of that, canceled their plans for coming here. And they weren't going to be, Sheila was one of them. She was planning to come, but she didn't come. And so we then tried to figure out how can we ensure participation in Glasgow for people who aren't coming to Glasgow. Right? So we have the hub. We've been doing things here virtually. So we've had a number of people participating with those of us who are here virtually. But in addition, we've had these satellite events. So when we in Glasgow had been in bed sleeping, my colleagues in Dhaka have been running virtual satellite resilience hubs for the South Asia region, and there have been similar ones in the Pacific and in Africa and so on. And they've been sending us messages here, which have been rolling on the screens downstairs. And it's been a great success. You know, they feel very happy. They feel very participated in this exercise. And I think it was an experiment that we weren't sure would work or not, but it has worked. And I'm very interested and keen to make sure that we make it work even better in COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh. Because this opportunity, this hub, is really the Venn diagram of the rest of the world with the blue zone. All right? We are in the blue zone. We have this little space where we can bring humanity and people together and connect it with some of the negotiators who are, you know, they're humans, but when they negotiate, there's not much humanity in them. All right? They speak on behalf of positions. They don't speak on behalf of humanity, which is very unfortunate. But nevertheless, this is an opportunity for us. You, the champions, are the non-state actor champions. We can bring in all the non-state actors. Some of us can come to the COP. But for everyone that comes to the COP, there are thousands who would like to come who aren't coming. And can we make this place a place that they then feel that they are coming to, that they are contributing to? And it doesn't really matter if it reflects in the negotiation text. I mean, they're not worried about text. A few of us worry about text, but they don't. They worry about a reality, networking, learning, sharing. And I think we pulled it off this time in a very creative way. And I'm very interested in building on that and taking it to another level in COP27 and then a higher level in COP28 as well. So thank you very much for starting this journey. Thank you.
And now I'm going to hand over to Jorge Gastumendi, who is a Race to Resilience co-lead, for closing remarks.
Dear family, we have to bring this to a close. It's been a beautiful journey, and much more work to come. I just wanted to take a second to thank Bonnie Benhayon. She is a project manager for the hub. She already left Glasgow, but she was here almost every single day, opening the hub and closing the hub, 12 hours per day. And she has brought us for the past 10 months, organized us, make us, look good. And so, and also wanted to thank the sponsors. So I don't know if the camera could show that or not. For the benefit of time, I'm not gonna be able to mention that. But Kathy, you wanted to say some words, yes, as a managing partner of the hub, the only one that is here besides, because Nate and Seth already left.
Thank you, Jorge. Hi, everybody. It's a bittersweet day. I wanted to say a special thank you on behalf of the managing partners for Gonzalo and Nigel opening your hearts. You led with vulnerability. You have sat in places and answered questions that are tough and new, and the world is changing, and you leaned in. And you're two men, and the world is, and the future is female, led by females, and we have a new way of doing things, and the resilience agenda and the resilience hub and the race to resilience are pushing and driving and demanding that change, and you leaned into it. And it's tough, and I want to commend you for doing that. And today you showed your hearts, and you might be a little bit tired and maybe a little hungover, and that helps. And so I think we should have all of these sessions just at the end, just after the big party, just to bring that extra bit of emotion. But I wanted to say thank you. We've done something really special. This has exceeded our expectations, and there were some very tense moments along this road that we all don't need to revisit that were really challenging. And so it's really satisfying to be at this moment to see what we have achieved and who we brought all over the world in person and not. And thank you both for bringing your whole heart. We've got a lot more work to do, but thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Jorge, Kathy, and thank you again to the high-level champions for joining us for this one last session, and to everyone that helped behind the scenes. And with that, I now close this session. Thank you.